Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of December. Today we have some updates, so let's start. And first we're going to start with the Kupiansk-Liman front line from this area. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians reported that Ukrainians made few attempts of counteroffensive operation in this area, but all those attacks were repulsed by the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians managed to attack some accumulation of Ukrainian forces all over the front line, and as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainian lost around 15 soldiers and something around 2 armored vehicles. As you can see, not much. So we can say that the front line on the Kupiansk-Liman area has been stabilized, and we can say that there is a small pause all over the front line, and maybe this is the pause before the big storm that we're going to see even this year. Furthermore, if you remember, yesterday we discussed some kind of operation of the Russians in this area near Masyutovka, that the Russians reported that they were pushing the Ukrainians in this area. As you can see, there are no updates on this map, but if we take a look at the Institute of Study of War, they are providing very interesting information. Yesterday there were no updates like this, and today they have updated their map showing that the Russians entered the town by the name of Dvurechne, this one. To tell the truth, I haven't heard such reports from the Russian side, because it's highly unlikely that the Russians were able to cross Oskol River and to take control over Dvurechne, but I believe that Institute of Study of War, they have their own sources and they provided this information. So if it's true, that means that let's update the Western sources map just to understand what Institute of Study of War shows. This map shows that the Russians established control, something like this. So that means that the Russians not just pushed the Ukrainians near Masyutovka, furthermore they managed to cross Oskol River and to establish bridgehead in Dvurechne. So I believe that this is speculation, or at least maybe these sources is not correct. I don't think that the Russians were able to cross Oskol, because if the Russians did this, I believe we would heard this information from many sources, but not just from the Western sources. From the other hand, I understand that the Russians activated in this area it's an operation near Masyutovka, and operation near Kupiansk front line is just some kind of recurrent combat before maybe a possible grand offensive operation of the Ukrainians in this area, because as we know and we discussed, and we have today, we got more updates and more confirmations that the Ukrainians accumulated a lot of forces near Kharkiv. So let's see what these guys are planning to do next. A lot of updates are coming from Liman front line, from this area. The heaviest clashes are in the forest on the north of Grigorievka. The heavy clashes is in front of Pishana, Chervonopopovka, Zhitlovka. The Ukrainians are sending their commanders on scouts, and mainly there are some artillery duels all over the front line, but mainly we can say that 2 commandos from the Russian side and the Ukrainian side fights in this area in the middle line between Tarskoye, Terny and Krimina. As a result of heavy clashes for the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainian lost around 20 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. Now we are moving to Bakhmut front line. Bakhmut and Solidar, Belogorovka, Seversk front line. There are no changes. There are very heavy clashes along the front line without any progress on the ground. The Russians published a lot of video from Solidar, and they have a little bit updated their map. They colored in red another few blocks in the north part of Solidar in this area, but just according to the video confirmation and geolocation they received from the soldiers on the ground, showing that they were using tanks and they were attacking the Ukrainian position in the west-north part of Solidar, but without any further progress. If you take a look at Yakovlevka, the Russian source map has been a little bit updated by moving the gray line a little bit closer to Razdolovka and Veselaya, but without any progress. I believe that as soon as the Russians established control over Yakovlevka, now they completely concentrated on establishing their positions, bridgehead, and preparation before the next upcoming offensive operation. Some interesting updates are coming from Bakhmut, and the same thing. If we return to the Institute of Study of War, they have updated their map and they're showing very interesting situation in the eastern part of Bakhmut. As you can see, and we discussed this yesterday, that some Ukrainian sources reported that the Ukrainians managed to push the Russians from the eastern part of Bakhmut, from these streets, from the gas station in this area. And as you can see, the ASW map has been updated, colored this area in blue cloud, showing that Ukrainians reported about progress in this area. If we take a look at the Russian source map, there is no update about this, so I believe that this territory is in the gray zone, and we need to wait a little bit more to understand what did happen there. And to tell the truth, I believe that it is possible that the Ukrainians pushed the Russians from this bridgehead, because there is just one street of buildings, and it's very difficult to hold this position in comparison with the Ukrainian position on the west. So I believe that Ukrainians were able to push the Russians, but let's wait a little bit. Very heavy clashes. There are very heavy clashes around Klishchiivka. Furthermore, the Russian source map has been updated. As you can see, they have updated this small corner in direction of the railroad station Klishchiivka, and now there are very heavy clashes in this area on the north of Klishchiivka. The Russians tries to cut Klishchiivka from Bakhmut, and of course by this they will be able to reduce support and supply of this town. And furthermore, there are movements from the south in direction of the south part of Klishchiivka. I don't think that the Russians are able to take this town very soon, because if you take a look at Klishchiivka, there are at least 3 fortifications around Klishchiivka. On the west-south, this is the first; on the west-north, this is the second, and there is another fortification right in front of Klishchiivka. So it's a very powerful fortification, and of course the Russians need time to take control over this, and it's like a very long operation. I believe that they are able to do this by the end of this year. Yes, I believe. But for now, no progress in this area as well. If we are talking about Donetsk front line, the Ukrainians lost during the previous 24 hours around 50 soldiers and something around 10 armored vehicles. If we are talking about Peski, the Russians continue storming of Pervomaiska, of this area. This map has been updated a little bit. This map now shows at least, let's say, 30% of Pervomaisk under Russian control, the area that located on the northwest from this bridge, this red cloud. And today there was a report and video of storming of the northwest part of Pervomaisk. The Russians were sending their stormtroopers, their tanks, and the Ukrainians totally control this part. And so for now there are no progress as well, and I believe that Ukrainians are not planning to give up. They have resources, they have reserves, they have soldiers, infantry, so they have resources to fight, and they will do this. There are no updates about Nivoyska. The Russians are saying that they're storming this town, but without any progress in the ground. Furthermore, the Ukrainians during the previous week made few attempts to return control over this fortification, but those attacks were repulsed by the Russians. If we're talking about South Donetsk area, the Russian source map has been updated a little bit, and during the week we received a update from this part of Marinka, from these two. This is the hospital and the school, and according to the video, this area before today used to be in the gray zone, or some sources were saying that the Russians established control over this territory. But published video during the week shows that Ukrainians still have position in these two fortifications, these high buildings. So the Russian source map has been updated, and they moved their gray zone from this area a little bit to the east. And for now, there are no updates from this area as well. Of course, there are very heavy clashes, but just this situation on the ground is stable. If we're talking about Ugledar, the Ukrainians made few attempts by sending their commandos in direction of Salotka, Novomayorskaya, in direction of Nikolskaya, in direction of Novodarevka, Vremivka tactical bridgehead. All those attacks were repulsed, and the Russians reported that as a result of those clashes, the Ukrainians lost around 30 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. So we can really say that the front lines are stable. Furthermore, if we compare the events and updates that we receive from the front line today with the previous day, I must say that today is a very silent day. Maybe the next days we are going to see a very big storm or something like this, but from the other side, yesterday Zelensky visited the United States of America, and we saw like official position, but maybe there was some kind of protocols that were signed and that we haven't seen, and everything can be, and maybe these guys decided to reduce the activity on the front line before the new year or something like this. If we are talking about the Russian territory, during the day we received at least two interesting updates. The first one was that near Kakhovka, in the town by the name of Lyubimovka, the Ukrainian commandos or scouts killed the head of this small village that were he was hired by the Russian authorities, and they destroyed his car, and he burned alive in this car. Furthermore, if we're talking about Donetsk region, from this area, the Ukrainians attack small town, not small town, but some kind of place where the Russian authorities celebrate their holidays or something like this. These days, this place visited Rogozin. He's a very important and very famous Russian authority representative, and he was trying to celebrate his holiday, his birthday, in such a places, such a hotel, and the Ukrainians and somebody. There was a traitor, according to his words, and the Ukrainians attacked this building with 155mm shell. Two people were killed, and a lot of people were wounded, and Rogozin itself were wounded. But he's alive. If you don't know who is Rogozin, I'll try to explain to you. And you know that there is Elon Musk in the United States of America. He has his space company that he uses to launch satellites to space, and there is the same company in Russian Federation, Roscosmos, and this Roscosmos used to be under his control. He was like a head of this company. It's a government company. He's very famous and popular authority representative. This year he changed his position in Russian authorities, but anyway, he's very famous, and these days we could find him in Ugledar frontline, Mariupol, Ugledar, and the main job of this person was to help soldiers on the front line. He was trying to investigate, trying to understand the needs of the soldiers, and he works on such companies who try to develop powerful and battle weapon for soldiers on the front line. So he's a very nice target for the Ukrainians, but we can say that they missed a little bit. And that's it for today. There's no more changes on the ground. Let's wait a little bit. I believe that maybe by the end of this weekend we're going to see more updates, but for now, that's it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.